Welcome to Camp Chaos, where we celebrate the wild ride of modern womanhood.
Join us as we dish on motherhood, life's ups and downs, and all things pop culture that we know you want to talk about.
With special guests and expert insights, we're here to empower you through the chaos of everyday life.
Consider this your ultimate escape from the hustle and bustle. And as always, parental guidance suggested.
Camp is now in session.
Today's episode, we are joined by our friend Joanna Irwin, and she shares her heartbreakingly beautiful story of her son, Will. We first just want to thank Joanna for trusting us to share her story. This is really the first time that she's sharing her story at length, and while listening, it will be very hard at times. It is the most beautiful story, and we just want to thank her so much for allowing us to share it with all of you.
We've also included in the show notes the link to donate. Pediatric cancer is extremely underfunded. All of the funding that goes nationally to cancer research, only 4% goes to pediatrics, which is extremely low. So please see in the show notes if you are able to. I know Joanna and her family would so appreciate, and the Pediatric Cancer Research Foundation would appreciate it.
So without further ado, here's Joanna.
Obviously, you're here today because you had a tremendous loss in your life, and the greatest loss that any mother could ever experience, and every mother's worst nightmare, quite frankly. But we want to, before we honor Will, and we want to hear from the very early days of trying to get pregnant and what that looked like, and really tell Will's story through your lens.
Okay, so my husband Mike and I, we met a little bit later. I was 30 and he was 34, and I think I always knew, I want to get married or have kids. But then I feel like when I met him, I'm like, this is the person. And we were both really excited about finding one another and starting a family. And so having a family was top priority. So we didn't date for very long before we got engaged, and then got married pretty quickly because we were ready.
Yeah.
And I was tracking ovulation, everything, because I just thought that I would just get pregnant on my honeymoon, obviously.
Duh, that's what you're supposed to do.
That's what we
get married, you go on your honeymoon, and 9 months later, there's a beautiful baby that just pops out.
Yeah.
Duh.
And so it was harder than we thought to get pregnant. And we decided at the 1 year mark, we're going to go see a specialist. And there was nothing necessarily wrong, but they told us, but our age.
At 30 something?
Yeah, I'm 34. So it was
okay.
At this time, because I met him at 30, so I was probably 33 or, you know what I mean? Still,
that's
but
very young. Okay. But yes, they're your advanced maternal age at 35.
Yeah.
Sorry, what? Geriatric.
But, so and also for us, we were very excited.
Yeah.
And so it was you guys can keep trying for a year, and there's no guarantees if or when you'll get pregnant, or I can get you pregnant by December. And I'm
who was your doctor?
We went to HRC Fertility.
Oh, okay. I think we talked about that before.
Yeah. And so we were yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so we were
sounds like a guarantee. Let's go. And how many can you get us? Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why we ended up doing IVF, and we actually ended up with 4 boys and 1 girl embryo.
Perfect tested embryos.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had 5.
All right. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Did you choose which gender you wanted transferred, or was it just pick?
We did the healthiest first.
Okay.
Same.
Healthiest. Just we were
surprised.
We wanted to have a baby. Just stick in the healthiest.
Yeah. Which with 4 to 1 odds, it's going to be a boy.
I mean, we were
right. You're you never know, but there's a 20% chance it's a girl.
Yeah. So, and then they told, we weren't really surprised. They told us hey, well, the healthiest one is a boy. We said, that's fantastic. So quick, when we were dating, like I said, my husband was very excited about starting a family. Oh. And while we were dating, he was I want a son, and I want his name to be Will. I've always loved the name Will. And I just
he sounds like a little girl talking. That's something I would say, I want a baby.
He's there was this kid that I grew up with, and his name was Will. And he was the coolest kid. And I was just someday, I want to a cool kid.
Your husband is so sentimental. That is so sweet.
He knew all the sports stats and everything. And he's
and I want that.
And I want that. I'm all right, okay.
I'm going to give that to you.
And so when we were engaged and planning our family and even pregnant, we were at the time house hunting, Yeah. still in the same house now.
Like all these kids later.
Yeah, right. And it would always be like, oh, and this will be Will's room. And it was just like, he was so long anticipated. And everyone was just, I mean, so excited about this little boy. I mean, I was over the moon. Mike was over the moon. I was like, felt so connected to him when I was pregnant. He was just very, very special to us. And it was like, you know, when you have your first child, you go from like, we're a couple and yes, we're married, but like now we are a family. Mm-hmm. And there's something so special about bringing a child into the world and being like, it's us now. Mm-hmm. You know,
and he's like half of you and half of the love of your life. And
so that was kind of our, the pregnancy, went well. I mean, I don't really love being pregnant, but I don't have like complicated pregnancies.
I think that women that like being pregnant are a little off. I know some people love it.
Oh, and they like paint their bellies.
Yeah, I'm like, don't get me wrong. I think it's beautiful and it's great and connected.
I think
but it's like, I can't wait to the finish line.
100%. So yeah, I feel like for me, like pregnancy was like a means to like have my baby.
Right.
You know, and that was kind of it. But towards the end of throughout my whole pregnancy, I had placenta previa.
Okay.
But like not dangerous, but just like it's right there. So I had to like check for bleeding, and I was on like pelvic restriction. I think it's
no
called.
sex.
No sex and no like heavy lifting or anything like that.
So wait, you had placenta previa, did it move ever?
It never moved. And that's what they were like, it usually moves as the baby grows.
They always say that and it never does, I feel like. It's like,
and
there's a small chance.
Like early on, I like knew like I was probably gonna have to have a C-section. Yeah. And I was honestly like, I was fine with it. I'm just like, I very much trust my OB. I like love my OB. And I'm just like, if you tell me this baby needs to come out of my nose, he'll come out of my nose. Like whatever, like I'm cool. You know what I mean? Like,
who's your OB?
His name is Dr. Ackerman.
Okay.
He's awesome. I love him. He's like, you know, I have like my tribe of people who are like
he's
my
one
support.
Of your tribes.
He's 100%.
Yeah.
And he's funny. So that makes it
actually, he's at Orange. And he doesn't take new patients or something, right?
I don't know if he does or not. Probably.
I remember. Okay. I think Dr. Kozak told me about this.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Kozak and him are like
buddies.
Total buddies, which is how I met Dr. Kozak, and they're very close.
Taylor's like, you guys are so annoying with your pediatrician talk. Okay, so you love him. This baby's coming out C-section, and I'm okay with that.
Totally. And so I actually went in for like my his due date was actually October 21st, but we were gonna take him a little bit early because I couldn't go into labor.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went in for like my pre-op, which is I was supposed to. So I literally stopped working on a Friday, and I thought I had like 10 days because it was going to come on the 10th. I thought I had 10 days to like get everything in order, right? And I remember being at brunch with my little sister. It was her birthday, and my older sister, and I was enormous. Like my feet like didn't fit into shoes anymore.
Oh, you're swollen.
I was so swollen, and my sister like looked at me, who had like 3 kids, and she was like, when's your next doctor's appointment? I was like, oh, tomorrow morning. And she's like, pack a bag, you're having this baby. I was like, no, I have 10 days and I need these 10 days. I have a hair appointment. I have a facial. I have to fold his little, I got to fold his little clothes. Like, no.
This baby can't come.
No. And she's like, this baby's coming. She's like, Joanna, your feet are enormous. And I was like, that's normal, right? Okay. I went into my appointment and I had preeclampsia. And the doctor was like, okay, so we're gonna have the baby right now. And I was like, no. Like, I can't have the baby right now. He's like, well, do you want to have a seizure? And I was like,
you have high blood pressure.
My blood pressure was through the roof, proteins in the urine, everything. And I was like, no. Like, the baby can't come right now. And it's funny because me and my husband always talked about like, oh, it's our first baby. And like, we don't have this birth story because it's like, we have a planned C-section. Like
now you have a story.
And so I called my husband because we were like just joking about it. And I was like, the baby's coming right now.
He thinks you're kidding.
And he's like, oh, shut up. How'd the doctor's appointment go? And I was like, no, really, like the baby's coming. You need to get in the car and come. And so
you're 37 weeks, 38 weeks?
36.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh.
And so I go over to the hospital, and
within an hour, you met your baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
Were you like calm during the whole thing, or did you feel like
weirdly,
what is happening?
I was at first like panicking and like hyperventilating and crying. I called my sister, my older sister, and I was like, I'm freaking out. Like I have preeclampsia. Their baby's coming today. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. You get to meet your son earlier.
Yeah.
And that really like put me at peace.
Like, you're right.
And I had like the coolest anesthesiologist. She was incredible. And she, ever since like that first baby, full circle, she was always, whenever he had quite a few surgeries during his life, she was always, if he was ever on the board, she was his anesthesiologist. And she was there for like my last birth, and she like wanted to come in and say hi. And so this
woman is in your life. You're connected.
I know. Yeah. And she had a cool playlist going for me for the C-section. And then
so you had a birthday party.
I had a birthday party, and a lot of doctors come in for the C-section, and they all introduce themselves, and they're like, we're just going to stand back. We're here just in case. And that, for me, that was like very comforting. I'm like, oh yeah, like come on in, you know?
Like, I'm the center of the attention. Yeah.
And the baby came, and it was like really beautiful. And I remember like, I can still like our first family photo, and I've got like that huge bonnet on, you know, and they're like holding the baby there. And it's like still like I like look horrendous because I didn't get my hair done, but
you had no hair, no makeup, no preparation whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it's probably your favorite picture.
I love it. And like my husband's in there like cheesing, and like I got the blue bonnet on, and it was like such a special moment. And then like my husband, and then for the C-section afterward, they like took me to recovery, and Mike actually and the baby went somewhere separately.
Right.
And my husband will talk about how special that was for him, and how he got like right after he was born, this like one-on-one time with him. And even though like I missed out on that, like how like it meant so much to him. And he even will talk about that time and like how meaningful it was to him today. So that was Will's birth story.
Oh my gosh.
And then, so he was born October 1st. And it was like right in time for the holidays. And we just like doted over him. And he was just like
the love of your life.
The love of my life. And he was like the sweetest little guy.
Like the life you always dreamed of was starting to happen. Oh my gosh.
I was like living the dream.
Yeah. This is it.
This is it. I have like my perfect little boy. We got our Will, Mike was excited. We, my husband's in aviation. So we had like the cutest nursery with all these like vintage airplanes, and Mike had made sure he had his baseballs, set out. And like, it was like the just like the cutest little
quintessential boys room.
Yeah. And then we, went into the holidays, and the whole family were just like so excited about this.
He's like the golden little grandchild.
Yeah. We were just like living
the dream.
Living the dream.
And from when Will was born to like the holidays, everything is going according to plan, health-wise. Like for all of his pediatrician appointments, like nothing's alarming.
The only thing was like he was fussy. I had to hold him a lot, and he was fussy, and I didn't know if it was colic or me and my pediatrician were talking about maybe it's like some reflux and some things
gases,
that like.
Yeah. Also, you don't have anything to compare it to. It's your first baby.
Right. But
aren't all babies fussy?
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, one thing, I love my pediatrician. I was a new mom, and she took all of my concerns. She never brushed me off.
Yeah.
She never was like,
it's in your head.
It's in your head. She was like, okay.
She's
like,
in tune. She's part of your family.
I remember calling her at midnight being like, I can't calm him down. Like, what do I do? And she's like, bring him in the morning. We're going to she was there for me. I felt very heard, and like that was important. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed probably around like 2.5 months, right around like Christmas time, or maybe like middle of December, he had like a little like lump on his head, like a little, and it kind of looked like a hemangioma, where kids have like the strawberries and they're like raised. And I was like, I don't know, like this, it was, so I went to my pediatrician. She was like, I want you to go. She's like, again, she took all of my concerns, and she was like, I have a friend who is an incredible pediatric neurosurgeon. Why don't I'm going to have you go see him. I want to put your mind at ease. I don't think it's,
anything to worry about.
But let's go. And so like and I was like, okay. And she knew I was like nervous or upset. And so she like literally called him and like I went and saw him like that same day.
Wow. Okay, it looks like I do need to switch pediatricians.
Our pediatrician is like, I wouldn't have another baby without her.
Yeah. And so I brought him over there and we were literally leaving for Cabo. So it must have been like right after the holidays because we were leaving for Cabo like the beginning of January for like our first like family vacation. And I remember seeing him and he was like looking at it. He did a, like an ultrasound of his head. And he's like, there's nothing on his brain. This is all very like superficial.
Like almost like fluid maybe?
Yeah, it was definitely like a lump. And he's like, it's probably hemangioma.
What is a hemangioma?
It's kind of like blood vessels and it creates like a
pocket, maybe?
Like a pocket, yeah.
Okay.
And so he was saying he wasn't concerned. He's like, further testing would be like an MRI, but like for an MRI, we'd have to put him under and he's only 3 months. Like we don't want to put him under, you know? And then like same with a biopsy. I don't think we're there yet. So we're just going to watch it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm supposed to go to Cabo next week. Can I go to Cabo?
Can I go to Cabo? Yeah.
And he's like, yes, go to Cabo and let's like schedule an appointment for when you get back and we'll just do like a follow-up. So I said, great, you know. We went to Cabo and I truly feel like God was very much, sorry, I don't want to start crying already, was like a part of all of this because I had like the reassurance that I needed from like my doctors. They were like, have a good time. And I was like, okay. And we had like the most magical vacation. We like took Will in the pool and we took him to the ocean. And
you had so many firsts with him.
Yeah. And like we have like these awesome pictures and it's like what we needed. Like if he was diagnosed before, we didn't get to like go on this trip, you know?
The timing I feel like is like, and maybe even the doctors, you go to a different doctor, they could have said, it's best you stay here. You don't want something to happen over in Mexico. You need to stay here and close to home until we understand that. And I bet you 9 out of 10 doctors would have said that. So it's almost like a God thing. Like you got picked with the perfect doctors to say, nope, you need this trip.
You need this trip. So we did. We went on this trip. We had, and like, you know, we take him everywhere, you know, because it's like, this is our golden child. And we just had like the best time. And I have like these amazing memories of like, you know, holding him, watching the sunset and having a glass of wine and like looking at my life and being like,
I'm so
man,
lucky.
I am so blessed. I am so lucky. I did notice during the trip though, that like his little lump was growing. And so, while I was there, I said, you know, I want to come in. I talked to our doctor. Can we say her name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I keep saying like the doctor. You know?
No, you can. I talked when I was with her yesterday. She's like, I'm listening to your podcast. I'm like, when are you going to come on?
Dr. Kozak, I love you. But I talked to Dr. Kozak and she's like, you know, like come in. And so.
Right when you get back.
Right when you get back. He wasn't like not eating very well on the trip and some things. So I came back and to Dr. Kozak and she was like, okay, this is growing. She's like, I feel a nodule behind his knee. And she's like, I feel something on his jaw. You need to go over to chalk.
Oh, like right now?
Yeah. And so
is Mike with you?
No.
Okay.
Mike's at work. I'm very like, I got this. Like, I don't need you to like not go to work if it's like, you know. And so I called him, you know, and it was like, you got to come to chalk. There's something wrong. You need to come. And so we were admitted where we went to the ER where they did blood tests and a full body CT scan. And like, I will never forget like the moment that the doctors came in and they said, we need to admit you and we're going to send you to the oncology floor. And I was like, no. Like, you can't send me to the oncology floor. And they said, we see masses throughout his body and he needs to have surgery. We need to biopsy and we need to rule out cancer. And I said, okay. And so, but I just like remember, like, no one wants to be told that you're going to be admitted and they're going to send you to oncology. Like, no. Send me to the ICU. Like, send
anywhere but oncology.
Yeah. And so we were admitted, and the next day he was scheduled for a biopsy. Dr. Mahonen, who was our neurosurgeon, came and visited us. He like took us under his wing. We were like his people, I feel like, and he like loved Will so much. But Dr. Mahonen said, we're gonna do this surgery. And my sister-in-law, my older sister, her father-in-law is actually a deacon. And so I called Deacon Mark Murphy and I said, we need to baptize Will.
Oh.
So,
And this is within how long of you getting admitted?
I don't know, a few hours.
Oh, same day.
Like I called
Same
him
day.
and I said, tomorrow he has surgery first thing in the morning to place a central line. And then tomorrow afternoon, they're going to be biopsied. He said, okay, well, we're going to baptize him in between.
And,
he
God
was like,
over him.
And he said, Joanna, like if anything happens, like he's lived his life without sin. Like he's God's child. Like, and I was like, I just want him baptized. He's God's child. He's going to go to heaven. Like, like I grew up Catholic. So, and I was like, there was something like, I'm like, I just want.
It's important to me.
It's important to me. So he's like, no problem. And so that morning he had surgery. He got a central line placed. And it's like, he's 3 months old. He's like this big, And then my family and Mike's family came to the hospital and Deacon Mark came and they have like a chapel at Chalk and we baptized him and it was really beautiful. And then after his baptism, he went and had surgery to biopsy one of the tumors. And initial results, and Dr. Kozak was calling pathology literally every 10 minutes saying, I need results. And they were like, who are you? I'm Dr. Kozak. Hello.
Give me the damn results.
Dr. Mahonen, all of our doctors were pushing for like quick pathology results. And so based off of, and this is all like, I don't really know what this means. I've like learned a lot about pediatric cancer and cancer in general, but they were showing small blue round cells, which is indicative of cancer. So he has cancer and a very, I don't want to say like popular is the wrong word. A very like common, thank you. A very common childhood cancer is a neuroblastoma. And so neuroblastoma is small round blue cells. And so
when you say small round blue cells, like that's what shows up on the CT scan?
That's what was showing up on the biopsy.
The biopsy.
When they were like looking, like initial pathology results.
They're looking at it under a microscope.
They're looking at it, yes. Okay. And that's what they were saying. Full pathology can take 10 days to 2 weeks, but they were looking for like initial reports. And they said, this is what we're finding, which is because they wanted to start on chemo immediately because things were growing so quickly. Being that
Joanna, did you have a moment of like, but wait a second, this is an IVF genetically tested embryo?
Yes.
Like how?
Right. And that's like, obviously after going through this whole experience, it was like Mike and I, we wanted a big family and it was like scary. Like, so Mike and I, and actually like our family did like full genetic testing. And it was a sound embryo and they can't really, and his cancer wasn't genetically linked.
Not genetic. Honestly, you're getting the news, it's cancer. You're hearing the C word.
Yes.
It hits you like a ton of bricks, I'm sure.
Right. And then they said, but like, we believe they can't give us because we didn't have full pathology that it's neuroblastoma. And we were like, hey, that's good because like there's been research about neuroblastoma. There is a treatment protocol that's tried and true. There's a very, good success and survival rate. So like, this is
the best bad news.
Exactly. And then for neuroblastoma, they have like intermediate, advanced, there's different stages, there's different, and so we knew that it was at least like stage 3 or 4 cancer because it had metastasized, right? There was now tumors throughout his body.
And that's what the doctor is feeling behind.
Yes. Okay. So Dr. Kozak felt a tumor here. And there ended up being, his primary tumor was on his adrenal gland. It was probably about the size of like a peach. And then he had a tumor on his jaw, the tumor that we saw on his head. They were not on his brain, but he had 3 tumors on his head. He had some in his lungs. I mean, he was
all over his body.
Yes.
His tiny little body.
And so there's like a specific marker that they were testing on. And if it had this marker, and I might, for anyone who's like listening, I might be butchering this, but there was some type of marker that if it had it, then it was like advanced. And then it was going to be like the survival rate goes down and the treatment is like 18 months or longer. Or if it was, we knew it wasn't like, we knew it was at least intermediate because it had spread.
And how quickly it spread.
And how quickly it spread. Right. And so if it was intermediate, it was like the prognosis was pretty good. I think it was like, especially, it was good that he was so young, actually, because I feel like if you're 1 and over, your chances of survival actually go down a little bit.
Wild.
But the fact that he was so young was a positive. And like even if it was intermediate, then his survival rates were still really good. And it would be like 9 months of chemo. And so at that time, my husband and I were like, this is something that we're just going to get through. You know what I mean? We're going to buckle down. We're going to do the treatments and we're going to put cancer behind us. So we're going to move on.
Was your husband like the strength behind you during this? Was he like, were you guys strong for each other?
We were very strong for each other. You know, we, especially later on.
But you guys were in the beginning, like, we're committed to doing this. We're going to do whatever we can, obviously, to 100%. Fight this, and we're going to go at full force.
My in-laws, my parents, Mike's brothers and sister, my sisters, like our friends, like we had the best support system, who were visiting us, who were doing our laundry, who were taking care of things. My sister, like we had a dog at the time. My little sister like took the dog and was like, Jesus, I got the dog.
Yeah. Everything is taken care of around you. You just focus on your sweet baby boy.
Yes. And like, you know, my mother-in-law had a lot of connections at different hospitals, and she was like making phone calls and writing emails left and right. Like
everyone was working for Joanna and Mike everyone was working for Will.
Yes. And so I remember and so they said, well, now that we're pretty sure, like a very educated guess is that it's neuroblastoma. We're starting on chemo. Like it was almost like same day. And so we started on a chemo regime for intermediate because we didn't want to over medicate, right? So we're going to start a chemo regime for intermediate neuroblastoma. If we get the news that it's more advanced, then we can alter, but we don't want to start with advanced because
sure.
He's
Chemo's
tiny.
intense.
Chemo is intense. Chemo is poison. Chemo, right. It's not meant for itty bitty babies. So his tumors responded beautifully to the chemo.
Okay.
Like literally the lumps on his head, like there was like no more lumps.
Wow.
And we did a lot of
within days or within
within like a week, within like the first round of chemo, we noticed a big difference.
So you're looking at this like, oh my God, it's working.
It's working. He was eating again. I remember bringing him home and he was less fussy. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, he probably had like headaches or like and then there's that mom guilt, like my poor baby, everyone was like, he was fussy and I didn't know he was just like in pain, which is so hard. But we were like, okay, we can physically see it's working. And we would have like follow-up ultrasounds and MRIs and things. And it was showing that like the chemo was working.
Okay.
And so now we're just awaiting like the full pathology results. And it's, so I remember we were inpatient. So how initially it worked is we would be in the hospital for a week because he would receive all of his treatments inpatient. So we would be like in the hospital for a week.
Living in the hospital.
Yes.
You're living in there.
Yes. And then we'd have 2 weeks off. During the 2 weeks we had off, we would go into outpatient for 3 days out of the week for blood tests, for just checking in on him, everything. So when we had off, so it became like a full-time job. And it's actually, I went on maternity leave. I never really thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was actually planning on going back to work, and the trip to Cabo was like our last hurrah. And I was going to actually start work right after. And then, I didn't go back to work.
Yeah. Well, you did. You went to work for Will.
Yes. I mean, it really was a full-time job. And so that was kind of our regime. So I remember it was, we were in for our second round, and the doctors, all of them come in and they said, we got full pathology. It's not neuroblastoma. Because at this point, we accepted it. My son has neuroblastoma. I've researched it. I know where all the top doctors are. I'm prepared,
You're tackling this.
Yeah. And so the doctors come in and they said, we're so sorry. Like, this is not neuroblastoma. Every neuroblastoma has a specific marker or specific protein or whatever. And his tumor doesn't have these markers.
Are you like, check again?
Yes. And they were like, we've actually sent this to Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. We've sent his tumor to St. Jude's. We've sent his tumor to Boston Children's. We've had multiple teams of pathologists take a look at this tumor. It's not neuroblastoma. And I said, okay, well, what kind of cancer does my son have? And they said, well, we think it may be adrenal cortical carcinoma or some
We think,
but we don't know. These two other types of cancers that it could be, we don't see in pediatrics, and we don't really have the specialty here. There's one specialist at St. Jude, so we're gonna be scheduling a call with him, and we've sent more tissue samples to St. Jude's for them to look at it further. And we were like,
now you're just left with questions.
yeah, like what? In the meantime, we're going to continue the protocol because it's working.
Yeah.
And we are also going to schedule surgery to remove his primary tumor, which is on his adrenal gland. It's shrunk to a point where it's now safe to remove it. And so we moved forward with chemo, and then we scheduled his surgery, and it was a 6-hour-long surgery. We had the most incredible surgeon. We had Dr. Kabir over at Chalk, who literally called Mike and I the night before, gave us his cell phone number, asked us like what our favorite acai bowl is, and like brought us breakfast before surgery.
Oh my God.
These doctors that I've met are true angels, like
incredible people.
And so it was a successful surgery. They did have
He's
to
4 months at this point?
Yeah, right around 4 months. And they removed the primary tumor. And it was actually funny because afterwards they were like, we want him in the NICU because there's just a lot more care in the NICU compared to the pediatric ICU. And he was like, because this is like January, February timeframe. He's like, there's so much RSV going on.
Yes.
He's like, this baby is not going to the ICU. Like, this baby's going to the NICU. And I remember like, he's 4 months. He's been in the world, right? And
he's been to Cabo. He's been out of the country.
And so I remember going to the NICU, and like, he was like the dirty baby. You know what I mean? Because he's so I was like, my baby is not the dirty baby.
Because he didn't belong there?
Yeah. And like, even like the NICU nurse is like, we can't take him into the NICU.
You're like, yes, you will.
And Dr. Kabir, Dr. Mahonen, all of my doctors were like, this baby cannot go to the ICU.
Thank God.
Like, he can't get sick.
Cannot.
Thank
Cannot.
God for those doctors.
Yeah. And so we were.
And he still has his PICC line in.
Yeah, it was a
Which
central
full
line.
circle for you, like you worked in this field.
I did.
I've said it once before. I will say it again. Magnesium has truly changed my life. We recently had Dr. Nick on the podcast, and he basically told Kendra and I that almost everyone is deficient in magnesium. So we absolutely need to be taking it. So I have been taking Magnesium Breakthrough for a couple months now. And you guys, I'm not over exaggerating when I say it changed my life. And of course, magnesium helps you fall asleep quicker, helps you sleep better. But I think what it's done for me is I am now not tossing and turning all night and waking up stressed and not being able to fall asleep. I'm able to sleep better through the night, and I just wake up feeling so much more energized.
Over 75% of the population is magnesium deficient. So chances are you are as well. What most people don't know that if they're taking magnesium, they may be What most people don't know is that even if they are taking a magnesium, you still may be deficient because you are not getting all 7 forms. Magnesium Breakthrough is the ultimate way to give your body all 7 forms in one supplement. Join us in nurturing your mind, body with this all-natural, full-spectrum magnesium supplement. Simply go to biooptimizers.com/campchaos and use promo code CampChaos during checkout to save 10%. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. Weight loss solutions are not a one-size-fits-all. Everyone deserves to have a weight loss plan that is tailored to their specific needs. So if you're struggling to lose a little weight and need some extra help, it's time you check out Hers.
Weight Loss by Hers is realistic, not restrictive, and is focused on giving you access to the solution that is right for you.
Through Hers, weight loss plans are more affordable with GLP-1 injections starting at $199 per month with a 12-month subscription. No hidden fees, no access fees, and no membership fees.
Plus, your personalized treatment ships for free directly to your door. Start your free online visit today at forhers.com/chaos. That's FORHERS.com/chaos for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/chaos. Not available everywhere. Hers weight loss includes compounded products which are not approved nor verified for safety or effectiveness by FDA. Prescription products require a provider consultation. Restrictions apply. Actual price to customer will depend on product and subscription plan purchase.
I worked for quite a few years at ICU Medical where I was actually an oncology specialist. I was in my very young 20s, and I would sell these medical devices for oncology patients for their central lines. And so now, that was 24 years ago. I was selling these things, and now full circle, my baby has one of these devices on him.
To save his life.
Wow.
It was definitely a full circle moment. So we were in the ICU, and at this point, another God moment was there just so happened to be this intervention, pediatric cancer intervention going on in LA. And one of the CHOC doctors, because they were all talking about Will's tumor because it's very unique. And that's another thing, in pediatric oncology, it's really special to see doctors, they have a tumor board where all the doctors in the country get together and
it's
a team.
A national team, I'm sure. It's not just per hospital of
no.
sort of thing. It's
and they talk about these rare tumors and they talk about it. And so there was a convention.
I need an intervention.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I need some more coffee.
I need coffee.
Man, what
do you
am
have
I
any liquor?
about?
Where's the liquor in my coffee if we're going to continue this conversation?
Seriously. So they were at a convention, and one of the doctors from CHOC was talking to one of her old colleagues who is now at Houston Children's about Will. And he's like, I want to come visit this baby. 5 years ago, I had a child that presented the exact same way. And this incredible man, Dr. Venkatramani over at Houston Children's, asked if he can come and visit us and see us. And he said, at this point, CHOC was we just don't have the specialty here. And they just didn't have the expertise they didn't know what to do.
They didn't know what to do. It's not even a protocol.
There's no protocol. And that's
nothing.
one thing that I learned about, especially pediatric cancer, is if they don't have a diagnosis, they don't know which is kind of not ass backwards, but it's they're just we need to know what this is. If we don't know what this is, we don't know what to do. And it's just just treat the tumor,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So we met Dr. Venkatramani, the sweetest man, another angel.
You're also meeting these angels though, because you're getting the kind of attention that you don't want. You don't want this attention. You don't want to have all these doctors flying in to meet you. It's a miracle that you have this care, but at the same time, it's I don't want this kind of attention.
Right. And so he came in, he said, I want to treat Will. I had a child like this in the past. He didn't make it, but it's presenting very similarly. So Mike and I and Will went to Houston.
Oh.
Again, we had a really close family friend who was you need to get to Houston. We're going to get you to Houston. I've got a plane ready for you. We're going to get you to Houston. Oh my God. It was
the next day you're going to Houston.
The next day we're going to Houston. In the meantime, beautiful Dr. Kozak. It just so happens that one of the potential, they said it might be adrenal cortical carcinoma. There is a genetic tie to that type of tumor, and it's very prevalent in South America for some reason. So a lot of the specialists are in
Argentina,
special, and where like the doctors that she trained with. Dr. Kozak came and took a piece of Will's tumor, no joke, got on a plane and flew to Argentina to meet with the specialist in the world for adrenal cortical carcinoma and gave him his tumor.
Oh my God, Joanna. This woman. All of these doctors.
Of these doctors. And I mean, she is incredible. But through all this, we, long story short, it's probably going to still be long. He does not have adrenal cortical carcinoma. He doesn't have this other endocrine. His tumor, and to this day, it has been undiagnosed. We don't know what type of tumor this is. But we're going to see Dr. Venkatramani at Houston Children's. And they do even further pathology. They do further analysis, and they're saying this tumor is showing signs of like a neuroblastoma, but it's also showing signs of a Ewing sarcoma, which is like a bone cancer. And so it's showing all of these different characteristics. There are some treatments that we could do, but we'd have to get him to 1. Right
1 years
now,
old.
1 year old.
And he's 4
like
months,
4 or 5
going to
months.
5 months.
Yes.
Okay.
So right now, literally all we could do is chemo. That is our only option. So then it was like, we're just going to hit him with everything. We're going to do 1 regimen of like a neuroblastoma cocktail. And then the next time he goes in, we're going to do another cocktail, which would be like more of like a Ewing sarcoma. And we're going to alternate these
So we're hitting it from both ends of whatever it could be, potentially.
We're just like
Hopefully.
literally like throwing everything at him.
At a 5-month-old.
Yes. And so we were like, okay. And honestly, when we were doing scans, everything was coming back like these two, whatever the hell this cancer is, the chemo was working. We had a scan where there was like all of like the lump behind his leg was gone. The one on his jaw was gone. The one on his head was gone.
So as frustrated as you must have been as a mother, like you're still hopeful because
very hopeful.
Things are progressing positively.
The happiest baby. Everyone like in the hospital, like Will was like the light. He was like such a trooper. Like anyone would walk in and it was like he would put on like a performance. He'd be like smiling and giggling, and like all the nurses like wanted to like hold him, and he was just the best.
Mr. Personality.
And he was so like soulful. He would like look you in the eyes. I have like, I don't know if you've gone through my social media, but like when he was at 3 months, he would like sing to you and be like responsive. Like he was like, he'd be like, okay, Will, sing. And we'd be like, oh, and he would like repeat after you. And he was just like
full of life.
He was so sweet. And it was actually Dr. Mahonen, like the neurosurgeon, who has daughters. And at the time he has grandkids now, didn't have grandchildren. And his wife is actually a pediatric cardiologist. And so he would come and visit, and his wife would come and visit. And I remember one time they were like, you two, to me and my husband, were like, you guys need to like get out of the hospital. Like, cause we never left Will's side.
Of course.
Never. And they were
like, you need to go.
They're like, and Dr. Mahonen's like, me and Linda are going to like babysit tonight. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I think we could leave him with like the neurosurgeon.
We could leave it the neurosurgeon's wife, who happens to be a cardiologist. I think they've got this.
Yeah. And so they just like, they like loved him so much. And so that was like the first time Mike and I like left the hospital or left Will, was like Dr. Mahonen, and you know,
they've got this.
Dr. Mahonen's, the Mahonens got him.
After Houston and they tell you that you're going to do these 2 different types of chemos, are you coming back to Chalk to do these chemos?
Yes. And so they were like, you know, because like all we can do is chemo, like go be with your family, go be with your support, your people. He said, I can have daily calls with the team over at Chalk. I know them very well. And I have full access to his scans. So he was his doctor, but remotely.
Yeah.
And, but how, like I said, it was really like very cool to see how everyone like teamed up, and there was not like,
No one missed a beat.
No one missed a beat. He saw all the scans and everything.
And when you come back here to Chalk to start treatment, you're still in the mental headspace of like, all right, let's just do this. Like another power through, got to get him to 1.
Yes.
Like, here we go.
Yes. And so it was actually, and like, we had a plan, you know, even though we didn't know what kind of cancer it was, we still like had a plan. And we had these incredible doctors around us who I trusted, who I still trust, but we had a plan. And it was actually Masters weekend, because I remember because we were watching golf the whole time, and we had, Mike had gone to the Masters, like I think the year before, 2 years, and he had bought in his, you know, son to be this cute little like Masters onesie. So we put Will in his onesie, and I noticed that day it was like Masters Sunday. He was very like lethargic, like sleepy, and he was vomiting quite a bit. And as like a cancer mom, those are some of the signs. Like if a child with cancer, like, start throwing up or they get an infection or anything, you go straight to the hospital. That's it. You go straight to the ER and you call on your way and say, I have an oncology patient coming in, and you like, they clear the area and they have a room, like they have to. There's no, like you go through a back door, you don't go through the lobby. Like it's like a big deal.
What's the reason for that? Like, what could it be?
Why he was throwing up and lethargic.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh God.
I know. And so I call and I said, you know, I have I think at this time he's like 5 months old baby, 5 or 6 months old. And he's throwing up. He's been very lethargic. We're on our way. And they say, okay, so they're like ready for us, like as we're pulling up to bring him into his room. And they do blood tests. They do all of the testing. And we had another moment where all the doctors come into his room, and my job as his mom was like, because there was so much that was out of my control with this whole situation, but I'm like, I'm keeping him healthy. And so like before COVID, we had full COVID protocols at our house. Like when people came over, you wore hand sanitizer, you wore a mask. There was no shoes in the house because
you could not take a chance.
You can't take a chance because he had no immune system. So
you're like, I know my kid is healthy. There's no way.
Well, for me, I'm just like, who came over with a cold, or who, like, how did I let this happen? I had figured he had caught a bug. So the doctors come in and they say the cancer had spread to his brain. And we see tumors like on his brainstem. Because from his tumors, when they were like, you know, neck down, or even the ones that were superficial on his head, they weren't necessarily life-threatening because they were like they weren't affecting any like
major organs
or things like that. When it's in your brain, it's when it becomes deadly. And like one of the most deadly types of tumor would be like a brain tumor. It's not necessarily categorized as a brain tumor because it didn't start in the brain, but it had metastasized to the brain. And so that was, I guess he was probably like 6.5 months. And I remember calling. And so why he was throwing up and he was so super lethargic was that the tumors were putting like pressure on like parts of his brain and his brainstem. And that was like, literally, I remember like seeing stars, like I was about to pass out. I was waiting for them to come in and be like, he's got a bug. We have to bring him to oncology. We've got to get him on antibiotics. And it was just going to be a hurdle. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, we're going to miss like a round of chemo. Never did I think that they were going to come and tell us that he now had his cancer. Because we had a beat on it. The tumors were going away.
The last thing you thought is it's spread. Because you see them shrinking.
So
why would it be spreading somewhere else if those are shrinking?
And like what I've learned is like cancer is like smart and it can like mutate. So it becomes like resistant to the treatment. And I was like, because I'm like, what do you mean the tumor's smart?
He has chemo in his body. How could we be getting more of it?
Yeah, it like mutates and it changes and it becomes resistant. And so I called, and I think, God, it was late at night. And I called Dr. Mahonen, our neurosurgeon, and I said, this is what's happening. And he's like, I will be, and he needed, because he had so much pressure on his brain and there was like a fluid buildup, he needed a shunt. in his brain to like relieve the fluid, because that's what was making him throw up and so sick. And I said, they need this, which is for neurosurgeons, it's a pretty it's brain surgery, that's all they do. But from that, it's a pretty common surgery. And he says, I'll be there. Tomorrow morning, I will be there where I'm performing the surgery. Because I said, there was another doctor who was on call that for the following day. And he's like, no, I'm going to do the surgery. Little did I know that he was on vacation with his family.
Flying back.
And came back for Will and for our family. And so that was kind of like the beginning of the end. The last few months of Will's life, we lived in the ICU. Once the cancer spread to his brain, we couldn't get a hold of it. And then it ended up getting into he got like into his blood. And so it was like up and down his spinal cord. And we did a stem cell retrieval. There were some, and he had multiple revisions of the shunt because it would get like clogged, or things were happening. There were two different instances. So the last about month and a half of his life, we were living in the hospital, and there was on two different times they were like, hey, he's doing good, we can like move him down to oncology. And that was like really exciting. But then something would happen. He ended up having like anaphylactic reaction to one of the chemo drugs. And that is the scariest experience of my life. Code blue, everyone coming because he wasn't breathing. I remember my sister-in-law's father came in, and we just prayed over him, begging God, just save my baby. And I remember because he was intubated and tubes, and we're just praying God, just give me more time with my son. I just want to see him smile again. And I just want to hold him. And I just want to see that smile and his, light up his eyes. And I'm just praying, begging. And we got this one before things then made a real deep dive down, and that towards the end of his life, we had this one incredible week where it was like Will was back again. Ugh. And we got to, which was like a big deal at the time, we got to take him outside. Oh. We had to stay on premise, but we got to take him outside, and my little sister Missy and her husband Evan snuck us in some wine. And we went to Chalk's courtyard. We were drinking wine, and we took him outside, and he was smiling and giggling, and we're our Will's back, And he was just so happy. And then unfortunately, we had an incredible week. We had some friends from San Diego who came to visit and got to meet, see Will. And we had visitors, and everyone got to see Will, and he was just this happy, beautiful baby. And that was this beautiful gift that God gave us. And then after that, we couldn't get a hold of the chemo. And on May 31st, he passed away. So Will was a cuddle bug. He loved to cuddle, loved to be held. And right away, if you've ever been to a hospital, children's hospital, they put them especially babies in these cribs that look like cages. They have the walls up, and I'm no, we sleep with him. We hold, he's never not being held. I'm not putting him in a cage. And so we had to sign all these paperworks because we wanted a hospital bed. And Mike and I would just sleep with him every night, and we'd hold him.
The three of you in a hospital.
Or we did the three of us, and then we would alternate because you're up all night, and so one of us has to be sharp because there's a lot going on. And so we would alternate nights, because if you were the one with Will, you don't sleep. And we would just lay and hold him and sleep with him. And then it, you know, after it's a long time, and the stress kind of is a lot. So then my older sister, Jen, she's then for a few weeks took over nights. And so Mike and I could both like sleep, and she would come at like 10 p.m. and stay till like 7 a.m. And she has 3 kids of her own. And she would come and just hold Will. And she'll talk about like those moments with him, and like just being able to like hold him, and how special that was to her. And like she, you know, she just the support we got from our family was amazing, because I'm like, someone needs to be there with him. And like we knew Will like so well. And so we like I have like a PhD in Will. And so I could tell from the monitor, from his heart rate, from his oxygen levels. And I would just be calling like, we needed, like, he's in pain. Like cause I saw the spike in this or that. And like, we knew him so well that like, we were like, this baby's not going to be in pain. And so I'm sure like the nursing staff was like, let us do our job. And I was like, call button, like all night. Cause you know.
So towards the end, was it more of pain?
Towards the end, so we started, there's a new type, we did a big stem cell collection, just in case we needed it down the road. And then we tried something, it was kind of honestly like our Hail Mary was, I'm trying to remember what the name of the treatment was. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Just describe it.
It was a more progressive treatment. So it wasn't chemo or anything, but it was kind of like the cells attacking the cancer cells, like putting in cells to attack cancer cells. Anyway, it's very hard on your body. It was hard on him. It caused a lot of nausea. He was intubated the whole time during this treatment. God, I wish I can remember what it was. I'm sorry. Immunotherapy. So that was like our Hail Mary is like, we're going to do immunotherapy. And, but it was really hard on him. He was intubated the whole time. And he was like, not really like when they keep him very heavily sedated, because you'd freak out if he had a tube. So when we had this, like I said, our incredible week. And then we had this real bad turn of events where they brought us back up to ICU, and they said, we're going to do this immunotherapy. It's kind of like our last hope. And so we said, okay, we're going to do the immunotherapy then. And he was intubated during that time. I think it was like a 5-day thing. We got through 3 days, and his vitals were starting to go south. His like urine output, because he was like had a, you know, was catheter was quite bloody. Organs were starting to fail, and they rushed him down for an emergency MRI, and they were like innumerable tumors. And I remember Dr. Mahonen showing me, and the hardest thing is, and he was like on, you know, he wasn't breathing on his own, any of that. And he said, Joanna, it's time. And so me and my husband just crawled into bed with him, and we just held him while they like turned the machines off that were keeping him alive. And we said our goodbyes, and we knew it was the right thing. We knew it was his time. And there was definitely like a moment where we felt his spirit, and I remember my husband and I, because we're holding him, and my cousin, who's actually my son Tommy's godmother at this time, she was a ICU nurse at Chalk, and she was with us through this whole thing. And I remember saying, Allie, you need to tell me what's going to happen when we turn these machines off. And she very calmly was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. We're going to see, and eventually he's going to flatline. I was like, I need to be prepared. And so she was with us the whole time, and she told us what's going to happen. And our beautiful son, he just passed away in our arms. And then, when we were in the ICU, we saw like a lot of children pass. And anytime they would like bring out like the hospital bed with like the blanket over, you knew like somebody had died. And I remember telling my cousin, Allie, and I said, I don't want him to be like pulled out in his hospital bed. And she says, okay. And so Mike and I we bathed him and we spent quite a bit of time with him after he had passed. And I dressed him, and Will loved to be like warm and cuddly. He like liked to have beanies, and he always had like stuffed animals. He loved like soft things on his face and around his head. And so I was just, and he liked to be like bundled up. He just loved being bundled up. And so I had one of those like little giraffe, super fuzzy blankets. And so we got him dressed and we held him. And then I swaddled him in this soft blanket. And my cousin carried him to the morgue because I couldn't have him. I couldn't see my son. So we swaddled him up in his big cozy blanket and she carried him. And I know it was so much for me to ask of her, but
you needed it.
I needed it. I couldn't have that visual of my son being taken away on the bed.
No. Joanna, what you went through, I think every woman out there, but every mother. I wish I could say something right now that's profound, but I just can't. But what you went through is a woman and a mother's worst nightmare. And you did it with so much grace and so much strength and so much will, no pun intended, for his life.
But it's like he literally has like the most perfect name.
He really does.
You know?
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Camp Chaos. Look out for part 2 of this episode coming soon.
If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Connect with us on social media at Camp Chaos Podcast. Until next time, campers.